Maryland basketball should rebound tonight against Washington.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at InsideBlackandGold.net. So make sure you guys head over to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. I think that tonight's game against Washington, Maryland should have a rebound win and another easy win under their belt for the Maryland Terrapins. I think the Terps are ready to get another big win, another Big Ten win, our second Big Ten win of the season. And I'm totally expecting Maryland to be able to handle the Washington Huskies and relatively with some ease tonight. I think that one thing that we have to talk about, Maryland needs a rebound. Last game for Maryland basketball was not good. I don't know if you guys really watched it. I did watch the game, and it was a tough watch. Maryland beating Maryland Eastern Shore, and you might look at the score and you just glaze over and say, "Oh, it's a 15-point win," but that was a team we were favored against by 40 points. But I think that one thing was for sure watching that game. Maryland was tired of playing these mediocre teams like Maryland Eastern Shore, bad teams, to be honest. They were ready to play in the Big Ten games. We looked bored. They looked bored out there. They looked like they didn't really want to be there. There's a lot of turnovers. Like Derek Queen had 6 turnovers. And it kind of made me feel better in a way about us heading into Washington because I know that Maryland's going to have a certain energy around this game being our third Big Ten game and knowing how much this game counts for what we want to do in terms of just our March Madness resume, in terms of what we want to do in the Big Ten, all those different things. This game really matters for the Maryland Terrapins. They all do. All these Big Ten games hold meaning. You don't want to look back and be like, oh, that's a win I wish we would have had. Oh, that's a win I wish we could have gotten there at Washington, a one where we slipped one on the road, but we should have won that game. And I really do believe that Maryland's ready to go, and I think we are more than ready to beat a Washington team that I don't think is as good as us. I don't think is nearly as good as us. I think they would probably agree with us if they were being honest. I think they would tell you Maryland's a more talented team. We can probably do some things to make it a close game to give ourselves a chance at the end. But we're better than this Washington team in just about every single area I look at with this Washington team. And I really think that Maryland's first real Big Ten out west road trip that we've had. I know that we've played different games out west, of course, over the course of Maryland basketball, but this is the first time it's been like an in-conference matchup where you have to travel across the country. And I think that's going to, I actually think Maryland's going to handle it well. I think we have a team that with a lot of guys that have been there, a lot of guys that have played some college basketball for a couple of years. Like, we're not a freshman-led team. I know Derek Queen arguably is our best player, but outside of that, it's guys that are sophomores, juniors, seniors, guys that have been there around. Like Julian Reese has been around a little bit now, so I think they'll handle the travel well. And I think usually you would think of that as an advantage for Washington, but I think Maryland will handle the travel well, and it's another reason why I think Maryland has a really good chance of beating Washington by a good amount, because I think Maryland's going to be able to handle the travel well. We have leaders. We have older guys. I think we also have a mixture of young guys that are be excited for this out west road trip. And of course, we get Oregon on Sunday too. So I guess Maryland just stays out there. But I think they're going to be excited. I think they're going to be ready to go for this game. And I think we're also it was clear that Maryland was bored of playing these lower level Division One teams like Maryland Eastern Shore, like Bucknell, like Alcorn State. Maryland's tired of those games. They were clearly bored and ready to play some real competition. And I think Washington doesn't know how much energy Maryland's going to come out with. I think we're going to be ready to go. And I think that's going to be a big part of it. So that's some of the stuff outside of basketball. But talking about more of the stuff that actually has to do with the game of basketball that I think shows that Maryland should have an easy win. Washington just hasn't been good this year. We got to be frank. We got to be honest. They're 9-4 at this point in the year. Depending on what schedule you play, 9-4 can look really solid, or 9-4 can be really bad. 4 losses right now for this Washington team. I lean on the side of 4 losses are bad for them. Like they've lost about every meaningful game that they've played against almost every decent opponent that they've played so far this year. Earlier on in the season, it started off with they lost to Nevada by 10 early on. And then they did end up beating Colorado State. That's probably their best win right now. But against Big Ten opponents, they lost to UCLA by 10. UCLA is a good team, but still losing to UCLA by 10 is not the best. And then they lost to USC 85-61. So it's pretty obvious that they're clearly having some trouble scoring the ball. And then December 23rd, somewhat recently, they lost to Seattle an in-state game 79-70. So they're not great. They're not great. This Washington team. This is one of the Big Ten wins. Like when I talk about Maryland wanting to win the conference, this is one that you have to win to be able to. This is one you have to be able to win. If you want to say at the end, Maryland is a team that can win the Big Ten Conference, win the regular season title. This is a game that, like, you just check off. This is one you win. This is one you easily win. And I think Maryland has a good chance based off of what Washington has done on the scoreboard this year. And at the end of the day, that's some of the stuff that matters the most. Washington hasn't been good. I also missed the game. They lost to Washington State, another in-state team, 73-89. So they haven't been that great. Their 4 losses on the year are pretty bad losses to Nevada, to UCLA, to USC, to Washington State, and to Seattle. It just hasn't been that great this year for this Washington team. And I think that Maryland should have a pretty easy time beating them because they just haven't been great this year, and they haven't been able to keep games close either. When they lost to Seattle, they lost by 9. And let me tell you, Maryland's much better than the Seattle team. When they lost to USC, it was 85-61. They haven't been able to keep games close this year. It's not like, they're losing a bunch of close games. Like, no, they're losing games by a wide margin. And I think that's a big case and a big reason why I think Maryland's going to be able to win this game. And then as well as another reason I think Maryland's going to win by a good amount, the free throws. Washington is horrible free throw shooting team, like really bad. Like I feel like I can go out there and shoot about the percentage they're shooting. They're shooting 63% from the free throw line. If Maryland was shooting 63% from the free throw line, I would probably just talk about it all day and say they better be living in the gym right now to get this up. 63% from the free throw line? That's something that just can't happen. And I've been one thing that annoys me about college basketball when I'm watching is the amount of fouls. Sometimes it just feels like games, there's just so many fouls, and it's annoying. That's the most annoying thing. I love college basketball. It's a great sport, but sometimes there's a lot of fouls. But the fact that Washington's shooting 63% makes me feel like foul these guys, play aggressive with them. And the thing is, it's a lot of their best players that are shooting a pretty low percentage. Like their best player, Great Osborne, is shooting 55% from the free throw line. Another kid that is third on their team in scoring, Zoom Diallo, who's averaging 10 points, is shooting 68%. One of their better guards, Makai Mason, who's fourth on their team, is 61% from the free throw line. So they've been really bad from the free throw line so far this year. And it's a big reason why I think Maryland has a big advantage, is because Maryland's going to be able to play physical with these guys, because if they're only shooting 63% from the free throw line, which I'm guessing it'll continue about at that same, like, it's not like, oh, we played one game and they had a bad free throw shooting. We've played a good amount of games now to know they're not going to be a good free throw shooting team. So I think that's a big reason why Maryland, I think, is going to beat this team. And I just think clearly offensively, we're much better than them. Maryland, I think, is way more balanced offensively. I think we have more guys that can score the ball. And I think Washington's going to have trouble scoring the ball a lot during their games. And I think Maryland's going to be able to benefit from that and put together really good defensive game. And I just think Washington, with their trouble scoring, their poor free throw shooting, I think it's going to be really hard for them to stay in the game with the Maryland team that we know is really talented, that a Maryland team that I think is one of the better teams in the Big Ten. I don't know if I'm ready to say the best team in the Big Ten. I can't say that, and I think we have to prove a lot, but I don't think people realize how good this Maryland team is. But I think the poor free throw shooting, as well as Washington offensively, they haven't been good this year when you look at what they've done. They're a decent three-point shooting team, not an awesome three-point shooting team, 33%. They're horrible from the free throw line. I just think that, and from the field, they're at 44.9%. I just think overall, I just think they can't do enough offensively. They have three guys in double that average double figures in terms of points. When you look at it, Maryland's got five guys averaging double figures this year. So it's just a different team, and I think just a less talented team than Maryland is. I think Maryland should be able to pull this one out relatively easily, and I think the Terps should have a big win tonight and get this road trip started off well, and then hopefully you go to Oregon 1-0 on your road trip. Let's talk about some of the key matchups. Let's talk about actual players and who do they have versus who do we have. How do Maryland match up? How does Washington play against us? Talk about that next. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a dub. If you want to bet on players to score a touchdown or how many points each team will score, you can do that over on FanDuel. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score touchdowns, how many points each team will score, like over-unders of the game. And there's so many other different things right now on FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So some of the key matchups of this game, some of the keys to this game overall. So I think that there's a couple different things that Maryland has to do to win this game. I don't think Maryland has to play their best game of the season to win this. Like I don't think that's just not what has to happen. And I just think we have to do a couple of things for Maryland to be able to win this game. I think number one thing, they have this kid down low, Grant Oscabor, who's a senior forward from 6'8". He's their best player by far. So far leads the team 14.2 points, rebounds 8.7 rebounds a game, 3.6 assists. Also is getting 2.1 steals per game. So overall, this kid's their best player by far. And I think that whether it's Derek Queen or Julian Reese, who's ever guarding him during the game, my thing is, I don't even think Washington has enough balance to be like, oh, you have to stop him. Like, even if he goes for 18 points, like, I still don't think they would have enough to be able to beat us. But you have to stop him from going crazy. You can't go for like 25 or something like that, because that's how they'll stay in the game. And when they've been able to put together wins, it's often because he plays at a pretty high level. But he has been prone to sometimes get into foul trouble at times, and he also turnovers the ball. So if you can force him to turn over the ball a little bit, he had 2 turnovers versus NJIT in only 18 minutes of play, 3 against Seattle, 4 against USC, 2 against Washington. Like, he's turning over the ball a lot. And so when I look at a guy like this, I think if you can force him to turn over the ball and maybe get into his head a little bit, I think you have a really good shot because every single game in his last 6 games, he's had at least 2 turnovers. And so I think it's a guy that you can look at to turn over the ball. And that doesn't even include, I didn't even see this. UCLA had 8 turnovers. In the game after that, he had 4. Like, he's turning over the ball a lot. He turns over the ball way too much. I got on Derek Queen for turning over the ball a lot, but this kid could like ruin the game for them. The amount he turns over the ball, he's their best player. But if you can limit him a bit, like, I'm not really too worried. If he gets, let him get his. But one thing is, if you force this kid to turn over the ball, which he has been prone to, like he's turned over the ball a lot every single game. It's at least 2 turnovers. 8 against UCLA, which is I think similar to what our talent is, and same as USC. 4 against USC. 4 against Nevada. And I think those teams are similar to our team defensively, and we know we're really good defensively. So force him to turn over the ball. Great Osabor. Kind of a cool name. The fact that his name is Great is a pretty cool name, but he loves to turn over the ball. So I think he's definitely a guy that you want to play physical with down low as well, because he's such a poor free throw shooting team. Usually the fouls annoy me, but if you foul this kid, I think it's a good thing. Don't let him get any easy buckets at the rim. He's not a shooter. He's not a 3-point shooter. So far this year, he shoots a pretty poor percentage from the 3-point line. So I think that you foul him. He's not going to shoot very many. I don't think he's going to be able to make a 3. He shoots 12.5%. So give him the 3-point shot, but he's really the main focus. They don't have a ton of other guys that I worry about. But he's definitely a guy that is a good player for sure, but he has some weaknesses in his game in terms of shooting, free throw shooting, and as well as turning over the ball too. They're actually a really good defensive team. So I don't think that this leads me to say Maryland's offense has to be elite. I just think we have to play good defense too to balance it out. I do think that that we can score on them, and the statistics are a little bit thrown out of proportion of how good of a defensive team they are, but they do blocks. They do get a lot of steals. So don't let yourself get blocked or get turnovers too many with steals or anything like that. But I just think we have to bring the same defensive intensity on this entire road trip. That's going to be the key. That's how Maryland's going to win on the road this year. We're plenty good. Last year, we were good enough defensively on the road, but we weren't good enough offensively. Our offense is going to be good enough to win games. If you play good defense, we're going to win a lot of games. And this is a game where this team is challenged offensively in a lot of spots. So if you just play good defense, your offense, even if it doesn't have a great shooting day, a great 3-point shooting day, or a poor day from, let's say, Queen or Gillespie or something like that, it won't matter. You'll win the game because Washington isn't going to score very many points, or they shouldn't. So my thing is, if you just hunker down defensively, we don't have to be more complicated than that. It's not like Derek Queen has to go off this game. Against Oregon, it's going to be different. But the key to this game is just play good defense and don't turn over the ball a ton, and you'll win the game. I promise you'll win the game. The Washington team isn't that great. And they're offensively challenged. They can't do a lot offensively. So if you play good defense, hunker down defensively, you'll win the game. I really believe that. Oregon, it'll be a different story, and we'll talk about that more. I'll have a weekend episode to talk about Oregon, but against this team, let's not try and get beat around the bush. Derek Queen doesn't have to go for 30. Jacoby Gillespie doesn't have to have 10 assists. Rodney Rice doesn't have to make 4 threes. That's not what we have to do. Just play good defense and don't turn over the ball. And I think if you want to get an extra push, force Great Oscar to turn over the ball. 8 turnovers against UCLA, 4 against USC. That kid turns over the ball, and I'm sure that we can be able to do that. Let's talk about the spread of the game. Do the Terps cover? We'll talk about that next. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff is an incredible experience that brings new fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games and can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. Gametime has new features called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for the events even easier. It filters out the stuff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used Gametime picks to find tickets for an upcoming game, and browsing through the deals was a breeze. And I found great value for all the kinds of seats around the venue. The super deals in particular stood out as the best value for the event. I love that I could see the seat views before buying, and that the app shows the total cost upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's talk about the spread. Maryland is a 6.5 or 6 point favor against the Washington Huskies team. And I feel like I've given a sneak peek already through this episode what I think of it. I think Maryland will cover the 6. I think we should win by like 10. That's kind of what I think Maryland should do against this Washington team. I think we should win by 10. Like I've talked about, Washington can't score the ball. This team literally can't score the ball. Offensively, they're bad. Look at their scores. They only scored 58 against UCLA, only 61 against USC, while USC scored 85. They just haven't been able to score enough points. Even in games against like not so good teams, like earlier on the season, Nevada, who's definitely solid, 53 points. They can't score the ball. And I think Maryland is much better offensively. And Washington can be decent defensively, but I think Maryland's better than defensively too. So I think Maryland's better offensively. Maryland's better defensively. You should be able to cover the spread. You should be able to cover the 6.5. Like, there's not a spot that Maryland's not better than. And I think their best player, great Oscabor, isn't as good as our 2, 4, and our 5s. I don't think he's as good as Julian Reese. I think Julian Reese is better than him and has proven it at a Big Ten level for longer. And I think Derek Queen's better than him. And that's their best player down low. And you look at it, we just have so much. Like I said, they have 3 guys that are scoring double digits. We have 5 guys scoring in double digits so far this year, as well as we're a better 3-point shooting team by a good amount. And then for covering the spread, a lot of it comes down to free throw shooting at the end of the game. If we're hovering around that 6-7 point mark around the game, it's going to come down to who can make free throws when both teams are in the bonuses. And you look at Maryland shoots nearly 74% compared to them shooting 63%. And so I think that will lead us to be able to win at the end of the game and really get to the number that we need to be able to cover, as well as they turn over the ball. Washington turns over the ball more than us, which is another big thing when we talk about winning this type of game and covering the spread, which I think Maryland will do well. I think we're going to force them into a lot of turnovers. And I think that whereas Maryland's not going to turn over the ball as much, we might a little bit, but I just don't think we'll turn over the ball nearly as much as Washington does. So I really think that Maryland should be able to cover this 6.5. The over under is interesting. It's actually looks like this line actually it opened at 6.5. It actually has moved down to 5.5, which I think is interesting. So it's moving down towards Washington side. So 5.5 is even better. So I think they'll be able to cover that. I do think the under is also going to happen because I don't think Washington, like I've talked about, they're offensively not very good, and Maryland's really good defensively. So I think Maryland could hold them under 60 points. There's been plenty of games this year where Washington hasn't scored that many points. And I think there's a good chance that Maryland holds them under 60 points. This Washington Huskies team can't score the ball, can't free throw shoot. I think it's easily that they'll go below that 60 point. And even if they score a couple points above 60, you still need a little bit more than that to go under 144, I think it was. That the over under was at, or 147. And then I also think Maryland is a team that's good offensively. I think we're still searching to be really good. But I think Washington's defense has proven that sometimes this year they're decent. So I'm not going to say they're amazing defensively, but at times this year they've been pretty good. So I do think the under isn't a bad play at all either. So I think Terps cover, and I think the under. But that's kind of how I see this game going. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.